So welcome to this SVT Dharma talk, and let's just start with the Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So today I've chosen a very well-known sutta, the Kalama Sutta. It's in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Threes, and it's Sutta number 65. And this is justifiably well known because it sets out a very clear aspect and approach that the Buddha took to practice. And that was very much that it was down to the individual to verify and come to understand the practice for themselves. And this came about because he was in a particular place, which was a junction between many different roads. And it was in a place called Kesaputta. And as a consequence of being at a junction of many roads, many wandering ascetics would pass through the town. And inevitably, with many different wandering ascetics, there were many different doctrines and teachings. And this led them to ask the Buddha, and perhaps they asked all of the people coming through, certain questions. So the sutta starts in this way. On one occasion, the Blessed One was wandering on tour among the Kosalans, together with a large sangha of monks. When he reached the town of the Kalamas, named Kesaputta, then the Kalamas of Kesaputta heard of his arrival. It is said that the ascetic Gautama, son of the Sakyans, who went forth from a Sakyan family, has arrived in Kesaputta. Now, a good report about that Master Gautama has circulated thus. That Blessed One is an arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the Blessed One. Having realized by his own direct knowledge this world with its devas, Mara and Brahma, this population with its ascetics and brahmins, its devas and humans, he makes it known to others. He teaches a dharma that is good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing. He reveals a spiritual life that is perfectly complete and pure. Now, it is good to see such arahants. Then the Kalamas of Kesaputta approached the Blessed One. Some paid homage to the Blessed One and sat down to one side. Some exchanged greetings with him, and when they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, sat down to one side. Some reverentially saluted him and sat down to one side. Some pronounced their name and clan and sat down to one side. Some kept silent and sat down to one side. The Brahmin Vachagota, down to one side. Sitting to one side, the Kalamas said to the Blessed One, Bhante, there are some ascetics and brahmins who come to Kesaputta. They explain and elucidate their own doctrines, but disparage, denigrate, deride, and denounce the doctrines of others. But then some other ascetics and brahmins come to Kesaputta, and they too explain and elucidate their own doctrines, but disparage, denigrate, deride, and denounce the doctrines of others. We are perplexed and in doubt, Bhante, as to which of these good ascetics speak truth and which speak falsehood. So the Buddha understood the difficulty that they were in, and he responded, "It is fitting for you to be perplexed, Kalamas, fitting for you to be in doubt. Doubt has arisen in you about a perplexing matter." So with so many different theories and doctrines and teachings coming in, what to believe and what not to believe. And we might be equally faced with the same dilemma. However, come, Kalamas, do not go by oral tradition, by lineage of teaching. So that is a teaching that's been handed down from teacher to pupil and pupil and pupil. And just for the sake that it's been handed down for so long, gives it an authority. But don't take it just on this basis. Do not go by hearsay. Someone simply saying that this teaching is better and truer. By a collection of scriptures, simply because there are writings which are, or in those days perhaps memorized scriptures that are repeated and repeated by many different people. Simply in that repetition, the establishment of the scripture doesn't necessarily make it any truer. Do not go by logical reasoning. So the capacity for a teacher to debate and show through a degree of logical reasoning that X equals Y. Or by inferential reasoning. So when we infer a meaning from information we've been given. Or by reasoned cogitation. So that's an intellectual understanding and reasoning using the intellect. Or by acceptance of a view after pondering it. So maybe some ideas have come through and they've struck a chord, and then on reflection we might feel, maybe that's right. Or by the seeming competence of a speaker. So this might be a charismatic individual who simply by the manner in which they present themselves inclines you to believe them. They're a convincing orator. Or because you think this ascetic is our guru. So it's tempting perhaps to have someone who is set up in a position of authority, and therefore with that authority whatever they say must be true and right. But so all of those things are they're not empirical observation. But when, Kalamas, you know for yourselves these things are unwholesome, these things are blameworthy, these things are censured by the wise, these things, if accepted and undertaken, lead to harm and suffering, then you should abandon them. So here's the invitation to observe directly the consequences of individual action. So rather than handing out the responsibility to others about what is true or what is not, the Buddha is inviting each person to individually begin to observe. What do you think, Kalamas? When greed arises in a person, is it for their welfare or their harm? For their harm, Bhante. So here the Buddha is inviting them to think in terms of greed, hatred and delusion. And in the Buddha's teaching, these are the unwholesome roots, the 3 akusala roots. So he's, if you like, introducing his own teaching, which might have been mirrored by others, but introducing this aspect of his teaching as through a questioning of the Kalamas themselves, appealing to their own experience for whether they agree or disagree with his proposition here. Kalamas, a greedy person overcome by greed, with mind obsessed by it, destroys life, takes what is not given, transgresses with another's wife, and speaks falsehood, and he encourages others to do likewise. Will that lead to his harm and suffering for a long time? Yes, Bhante. What do you think, Kalamas? When hatred arises in a person, is it for his welfare or for his harm? For his harm, Bhante. Kalamas, a person who is full of hate, overcome by hate, with a mind obsessed by it, destroys life, takes what is not given, transgresses with another's wife, and speaks falsehood, and he encourages others to do likewise. Will that lead to his harm and suffering for a long time? Yes, Bhante. What do you think, Kalamas? When delusion arises in a person, is it for his welfare or for his harm? For his harm, Bhante. Kalamas, a person who is deluded, overcome by delusion, with a mind obsessed by it, destroys life, takes what is not given, transgresses with another's wife, and speaks falsehood. And he encourages others to do likewise. Will that lead to his harm and suffering for a long time? Yes, Bhante. What do you think, Kalamas? Are these things wholesome or unwholesome? Unwholesome, Bhante. So here we have the Buddha bringing through greed, hate, and delusion as the three unwholesome roots. So if you like, he's established that the Kalamas at least have this perspective. There were some teachings at the time of the Buddha which didn't recognize the unwholesome roots. One teaching would have said that there was no karma, there was no right or wrong. There was simply one could do whatever one wanted. So to a degree, through this questioning, he's established that there's a basis in the Kalamas that is sympathetic to the way that he would choose to teach. So do you think these are wholesome or unwholesome? Unwholesome, Bhante. Blameworthy or blameless? Blameworthy, Bhante. Censured or praised by the wise? Censured by the wise, Bhante. Accepted and undertaken? Do they lead to harm and suffering or not? Or how do you take it? Accepted and undertaken, these things lead to harm and suffering. So we take it. Thus, Kalamas, when we said, "Come, Kalamas, do not go by oral tradition, by lineage of teaching, by hearsay, by collection of scriptures, by logical reasoning, by inferential reasoning, by reasoned cognition, by the acceptance of a view after pondering it, by the seeming competence of the speaker, or because you think the ascetic is our guru." But when, Kalamas, you know for yourselves, these things are unwholesome, these things are blameworthy, these things are censured by the wise, these things, if undertaken and practiced, lead to harm and suffering, then you should abandon them. It is because of this that this was said. Come, Kalamas, do not go by oral tradition, by lineage of teaching, by hearsay, by a collection of scriptures, by logical reasoning, by inferential reasoning, by reason cognition, by the acceptance of a view after pondering it, by the seeming competence of a speaker, or because you think the ascetic is our guru. But when you know for yourselves, these things are wholesome, these things are blameless, these things are praised by the wise, these things, if accepted and undertaken, lead to welfare and happiness, then you should live in accordance with them. What do you think, Kalamas? When non-greed arises in a person, is it for their welfare or their harm? For their welfare, Bhante. Kalamas, a person without greed, not overcome by greed, their mind not obsessed by it, does not destroy life, does not take what is not given, does not transgress with another's wife, does not speak falsehood, nor do they encourage others to do likewise. Will that lead to their welfare and happiness for a long time? Yes, Bhante. What do you think, Kalamas? When non-hatred arises in a person, is it for their welfare or for their harm? For their welfare, Bhante. Kalamas, a person who is without hate, not overcome by hatred, their mind not obsessed by it, does not destroy life, take what is not given, transgress with another's wife, or speak falsehood, nor do they encourage others to do likewise. Will that lead to their welfare and happiness for a long time? Yes, Bhante. And what do you think, Kalamas? When non-delusion arises in a person, is this for their welfare or for their harm? And remember, non-delusion here is, Bhante Ramsey would always say that the delusion was our tendency to take experience personally, to attach on to experience and give it an importance it didn't have, to connect into it, to make it about me, mine, or my own. So this delusion is very important. So we've looked at greed, the attachment onto things, onto sensory experience. We've looked at hatred, the aversion, the pushing away of sensory experience. And this is the delusion, the attachment to the idea that the experience is mine or about me, or I'm part of that experience. Kalamas, a person who is undeluded, not overcome by delusion, their mind not obsessed by it, does not destroy life, take what is not given, transgress with another's wife, or speak falsehood, nor do they encourage others to do likewise. Will that lead to his welfare and happiness for a long time? Yes, Bhante. What do you think, Kalamas? Are these things wholesome or unwholesome? Wholesome, Bhante. Blameworthy or blameless? Blameless, Bhante. Censured or praised by the wise? Praised by the wise, Bhante. Accepted and undertaken, do they lead to welfare and happiness or not? Or how do you take it? Accepted and undertaken, these things lead to welfare and happiness. So we take it. Thus, Kalamas, when we said, "Come, Kalamas, do not go by oral tradition, by lineage of teaching, by hearsay, by collection of scriptures, by logical reasoning, by inferential reasoning, by reasoned cognition, by the acceptance of a view after pondering it, by the seeming competence of a speaker, or because you think the ascetic is our guru. But when you know for yourselves, these things are wholesome, these things are blameless, these things are praised by the wise, these things, if accepted and understood, lead to welfare and happiness, then you should live in accordance with them. It is because of this that this was said." So the key phrase here is, "but when you know for yourselves." So this is self-verification, and that's really important. We can't delegate that part of our practice. We have to observe it for ourselves. And this is the vision that we need. It's the other half of knowledge and vision. And when we have knowledge and vision coming together, then we have the framework of the teaching and our direct experience knitting together. And this is what builds confidence in the practice. We begin to see and observe what it is that we've learned about. And that's the stepping stone that takes us on to the next stage, which is a stage of disenchantment. Now, disenchantment is, I think, most easily understood if we perhaps think of fairy stories or mythical stories where someone has had a spell put on them and they've become enchanted. Now, when they're enchanted, they're not in their full command of their own senses. They're under the control of the spell. And this is kind of what the Buddha was talking about when he was talking about delusion, that we're operating under a spell. And the spell is that we take things personally. We think they're about us. We are the center of the experience rather than the observer of the experience. And so when we get knowledge and vision, when we do what is said here, but when you know for yourselves and start to build that individual experience, then we begin to see how the spell has been spun. And because we begin to see this, we begin to have, or the spell begins to have less effect on us. And that's the disenchantment. And as the disenchantment develops, then it moves into dispassion. And dispassion simply means to act without the basis of emotions driving those actions. And where do the emotions come from? The emotions come from the identity that we have with our experience. If I feel I'm being attacked, I will have a strong emotion. If I'm simply seeing and observing the communication that's going on with clarity, I don't have the same emotional buy-in to what's going on. So then the disenchantment leads to dispassion. this taking out of the emotional charge in our exchanges and the way we relate. And as dispassion develops, then the knowledge and vision moves into knowledge and wisdom. So this is the process of development, and it comes from the very first stage that the Buddha was describing here, of observing rather than just receiving the teaching and taking it on trust. No, the Buddha wanted you to, and wanted all of us, to observe clearly so that we built confidence in the Dharma. And then we could take, as he did, the Dharma as our teacher. Yeah. Then Kalamas, that noble disciple, who is thus devoid of longing, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending. So here's the knowledge and vision. Ever mindful, dwells pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. Thus, above, below, across, and everywhere, and to all as to himself. He dwells pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, vast, exalted, measureless, without enmity, without ill will. Oh, it has to be without ill will, because loving kindness is the antidote to ill will. Then that noble disciple, who is thus devoid of longing, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful, dwells pervading one quarter of the mind imbued with compassion. Thus, likewise the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. Thus above, below, across, and everywhere, and to all as to himself. He dwells pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with compassion, vast, exalted, measureless, without enmity, and without ill will. Likewise, he dwells pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with sympathetic joy. Likewise, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. Thus above, below, across, and everywhere, and to all as to himself. He dwells pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with with sympathetic joy, vast, exalted, measureless, without enmity, without ill will. Apologies for the hesitation. I'm just filling in the blanks in the text here. And likewise, they dwell pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with equanimity. Likewise, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. Thus above, below, across, and everywhere, and to all as to themselves. They dwell pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with equanimity, vast, exalted, measureless, without enmity, without ill will. This noble disciple, Kalamas, whose mind is in this way, without enmity, without ill will, undefiled and pure, has won 4 assurances in this very life. So here the Buddha's then going to go through 4 ways of looking at, if you like, whether karma has a consequence. And he identifies 4 different ways. And I think that what's going on here is this is to counter the different teachings that are coming through that the Kalamas are hearing. So different teachers will have different views on the effect of action and whether it has a moral quality or an ethical quality or not. So the first assurance this noble disciple has won is, if there is another world, and if there is the fruit and result of good and bad deeds. So here's describing karma. It is possible that with the breakup of the body after death, I will be reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world, because I've focused on the wholesome rather than the unwholesome. The second assurance that the noble disciple has won is this: if there is no other world, so no rebirth, and there is no fruit and result of good and bad deeds, so there's no karma, still right here in this very life, I maintain myself in happiness, without enmity and ill will, free of trouble. So because I'm choosing to live in a place of loving kindness, no ill will, without cruelty, so with compassion, with sympathetic or altruistic joy, and with equanimity, then in this life here and now, I am going to maintain myself in happiness, because my relationship to what's happening to me is much more balanced. The third assurance the noble disciple has won is this: suppose evil comes to one who does evil. So this is the doctrine of, that karma has an immediate response. In other words, so if I do evil, evil comes to me. No? Then when I have no evil intentions towards anyone, how can suffering that's dependent upon this process afflict me, since I do no evil deed? So if karmic retribution is very quick, if I'm guarding my senses and guarding my behavior, then I'm not going to be afflicted by this. So there may be some other ascetics who come through this town, and that might be their doctrine. So what the Buddha is showing here is that he has taken them through this greed, hatred, and delusion teaching and shown them that it's beneficial, or, almost irrespective of what other doctrines are being taught. And the fourth assurance that the noble disciple has won is this: suppose evil does not come to one who does evil. Then right here, I see myself purified in both respects. So purified because of the good behavior, creating happiness, or at least not creating undue suffering. And also that there is no retribution according to actions. So your actions are good, so there's no retribution, so that's fine. You don't have to hope that there are no retributions for your unwholesome actions in the hope of not receiving some sort of karmic retribution. So I think what's happening here is the Buddha is setting up the Kalamas to have a practice which the Buddha approves of, this moving from the unwholesome to the wholesome, and showing them that it's consistent with or beneficial regardless of the teachings that are coming through, with other sects and other teachers. This noble disciple, Kalamas, whose mind is in this way, without enmity, without ill will, undefiled and pure, has won these 4 assurances in this very life. So it is, blessed one, so it is, fortunate one, this noble disciple whose mind is in this way, without enmity, without ill will, undefiled and pure, has won 4 assurances in this very life. The first assurance is that if there is another world, and if there is the fruit and result of good and bad deeds, it is possible that with the breakup of the body after death, I will be reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. The second assurance that they have won is this: if there is no other world, and there is no fruit and result of good and bad deeds, still right here in this very life, I maintain myself in happiness without enmity and ill will, free of trouble. The third assurance they have won is this: suppose evil comes to one who does evil, then when I have no evil intentions towards anyone, how can suffering afflict me, since I do no evil deed? And then the fourth assurance he has won is this: suppose evil does not come to one who does evil, then right here I see myself purified in both respects. This noble disciple, Bhante, whose mind is in this way, without enmity, without ill will, undefiled and pure, has won these 4 assurances in this very life. I'm just trying to find the complete text for the last part here. I'm afraid it's many suttas back. Okay, I'm going to have to leave that. Excellent, Bhante. We go for refuge to the Blessed One, to the Dharma and to the Sangha of bhikkhus. Let the Blessed One consider us lay followers who from today have gone from refuge for life. So what we have here is the Buddha skillfully directing the Kalamas to think in terms of what is wholesome and what is unwholesome, in respect to the unwholesome roots, if you like, the greed, the hatred, and the delusion, and appealing to their experience in life around these, to show them a way of beginning to experience for themselves the nature or the consequence of choosing to move towards the wholesome, away from the unwholesome. So what the Buddha is doing here is, without proclaiming his teaching, nothing in here is proclaiming his teaching. He has taught them the central part of the Eightfold Path, and that is right effort. And right effort, embraced in Twim through Bhante Vimaramsa's teaching, is the 6 R's. So, recognizing an unwholesome state has arisen, releasing away from that unwholesome state, relaxing the tension around our brain and in our body, which is releasing the craving, which is the attachment or aversion, the greed or the hate towards whatever that distraction was. Re-smiling, which is bringing up the wholesome, and returning to the object of attention, which is the loving kindness, which is a wholesome state. Remember that the Buddha described the 4 Brahma Viharas as the 4 blameless states. And throughout this sutta, he's saying, are these states blameworthy or blameless? Well, if we return with right effort back to a blameless state, we're returning back to the state that the Buddha is encouraging us to experience. And then we repeat this. And in doing that, we are completing the 4 steps of right effort. So, appealing to their experience, their everyday life, giving them the authority, if you like, to make the choice for themselves based on their own experience. He's subtly introduced the key building blocks of the practice that he would teach. So let's just sit for a few minutes and just absorb a little of what the Kalama Sutta has. And then if you've got any questions, I'll open up a session for any queries or questions. So sit comfortably. Softly rotate your inner thighs. So it's that very small medial rotation towards the midline. Rotate the inner thighs, and what you'll find is that will release your hips and open up your sacrum, the very base of your spine. And then bring your attention to a part of the body where there's energetic support, and that's below the navel in the body. Bring your attention there, halfway in the body. And then drop the inner edge of your shoulder blades. The parts of your shoulder blades closest to your spine, and you'll feel your shoulder blades just rotate a little. And that will encourage you to open up around your heart. And then softly smile to release the tension in your neck. Relax the crown of your head. So now you can perhaps feel your spine beginning to grow, and relax any holding and bracing around your brain. Now, allowing this energetic center below the navel, deep in the body, to provide your support, relax the rest of your body completely. And you don't fall over, you don't collapse. Now, bring to mind a time when you felt joyful and happy. And let the feeling of happiness be present in you. Drop the memory. And simply say to yourself, may I be well, may I be joyful, may I be happy. And let that feeling of joyfulness and happiness be with you. Now, stay with that. If you happen to be working with the directions, then you can expand that into the work with the directions. Otherwise, simply stay with the feeling of loving kindness. you're working with your spiritual friend, introduce your spiritual friend. Bring your attention to the sense of contact with the ground. Softly smile. Relax any holding and bracing around your brain. Take a deliberate breath in and out. And then softly and gently open your eyes. Okay. So any comments, observations or questions around the Kalama Sutta? The dilemma the Kalamas had is such a common one. You can also ask a question around practice. Hello, Zinni.
How are you?
Very good. Let me just turn the volume up so I can hear you more easily. Yep.
Actually, I have one doubt. Like in online retreats, normally we'll be asking one question, like how much time your mind was with your object of meditation.
Yes.
Tell me in minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Just I want to know how can we exactly know the number of minutes which we are in object of meditation.
Okay. The exact number's not important. What's important is the feeling you have. Is the feeling that you're just with it for a few seconds and then your mind gets pulled away, or do you have a feeling that you're with it for quite a time and that, or a long time? So just stay with the feeling. So I'd be much happier if you said, oh, less than 15 seconds or a couple of minutes, or well, it seemed to be good 5 or 10 minutes or perhaps longer. It doesn't need to be precise. It just shows the direction that your mind's going. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Hello, Thomas.
Namaskar, Sharma sir.
Namaskar. Time is not the important, it's okay. The moment you start radiating, you will feel some sort of change in your body.
Truly, sir, truly.
When it is there, you will be having the interest to continue.
Truly.
So it is only approximate time you will be speaking to your teacher. That's all, nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely.
When flow is there from the upper portion, entire body will get some sort of change. So when that is there, it's nothing but your mindfulness. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
No, thank you for your comments and contribution there. And indeed, when we're with the object of attention and specific, and when we're going through the jhanas, the sensation and awareness is very different. There's something which is very special when the hindrances drop away and the jhanas come together, and this in part is part of the collectedness that Bhante was describing, and that's why it's different to a focused concentration. It's a different experience, and I like to liken this to the mind is wide, and that we have good peripheral vision. So we're not narrow, we're wide.
Expanding.
So if you were to say in your reporting your meditation, how long you felt your mind was wide rather than narrow, this would also be a good way of describing it.
Truly.
Okay.
I would like to ask you one question.
Yes, of course.
Generally, when we touch even the plant, we feel not to pluck a leaf or anything because it is improving more day by day. Why should we do? Is one of the precepts deviation.
Okay. The rule around not plucking and not gardening and not harvesting and not growing was very much for monks, but not for lay people, because the Buddha recognized that it was important that people should be able to live their lives as they need in order to support their families. But a monk or a nun is in a different position, and they're invited not to till the earth or to garden or to prune, because of the potential harm that they might give sentient beings. So that might be small insects or whatever. But from our point of view, from a lay point of view, what we have to work with is our intention. Is our intention to create harm, or is our intention not? Is our intention to deprive sentient beings of life, or is it not? We might accidentally do so, but our intention, hopefully, is not. And this is why clarity of intention is very important, Chaitana. And Chaitana was considered to be the most important of the Sankharas. It's the one that has the most impact and influence. If we can have clarity of intention, and this is where the clear comprehension comes in from the practice, then we can safeguard our action, as the Buddha suggested.
It is what I am saying. Day by day, it is improving. Not to do. That is why.
Yeah. Well, we can become.
Everything is okay, but we are going to harm something. The inner feeling is increasing.
Indeed. But what I would say is, if we take this to its logical conclusion, then we adopt something very similar to a Jain approach of minimizing harm in everything we're doing, of perhaps sweeping the ground before we walk and wearing a mask when we're breathing so we have no possibility of breathing in insects, filtering the water with a cloth to make sure there's no insects or whatever in the cloth. And clearly, the Buddha didn't set those rules for lay people. He set a different set of rules, and I think what he was interested in for lay people is clarifying for them their intention, seeing that if their intention is one way, then that's a breaking of the precepts, and that has an effect, and you feel the effect for yourself. But if the intention is not there, then that's a different thing. So I think he was at some levels he was had a pragmatic awareness as well about how to bring people in lay life towards the teaching. But that's my personal view. Thank you for your question. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or any doubts, like the Kalamas? Please express any doubts you have, because they're almost certainly held by others as well. So
Hi, you sir. How are you?
I'm very well. Hello, Prashant. Very good to see you.
Yeah, me too. Acha, okay. Just saying hello to you. That's all. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much, and
Yeah.
good to see you. Yeah.
Yeah. Bye.
Oh, hello, Hugh.
Hello, Sammy.
Long time.
It is. Well, not so long, but good to hear your voice.
Thank you. I'm just recovering from malaria.
Oh, that's bad luck.
Yeah. But I want to talk a little bit about the practice. So, is the jhana supposed to come when you are focusing on the let's say the person you chose as a what do you call it, like the person you
friend?
Yeah, the spiritual friend, or is it comes after that dissolves and you go into the certain empty space, so to speak?
Well, empty space is one of the later jhanas. So the thing to recognize is that the first jhana comes when the thinking and examining thought, when the hindrances first of all disappear. So whilst the hindrances are present, jhanas are not possible. But as we release away from the hindrances, we'll feel the jhanas beginning to develop. And the first jhana has thinking and examining thought in it. It has an element of equanimity, an element of mindfulness. It has an aspect of pity. We begin to feel a sense of uplift, and the collectedness kind of brings everything together. So the first jhana, it has aspects of this, and then the second jhana, the thinking and examining thought begins to drop away, and we get this uplifting joy coming in. And this can happen whilst we're sharing our metta with our spiritual friend. There isn't a synchronization between those. You can be sharing with your spiritual friend before you're in jhana. You can share with your spiritual friend when you're in first jhana and when you're in second jhana. Yeah. And then it's only with the third jhana, or well, the second jhana, you've got noble silence, so you're no longer verbalizing your metta, how you're sharing it. So you'll notice your relationship with your spiritual friend changing, because you're no longer verbalizing the metta, but you're just feeling it. Okay. And then then the feeling moves up into the head, and then you start to work with the directions. And then when you start working with the directions, you're no longer sending it to an individual, you're sending it to in all directions, which includes the individual, which was your spiritual friend.
Let's see. Such a simple concept, but when you sit for the meditation, it kind of gets lost somehow.
Yes, so that's why it's helpful to come back and touch base every now and then, to because you're doing this observing, but it's the knack, if you like, of the practice is not to try and influence what you're observing, but just to let it unfold. And the temptation always, if we've got something that's got a little bit of structure around it, is the temptation is to look for the structure rather than just let the structure emerge. It's like on a very foggy day, and you're walking down the road, and the buildings gradually emerge out of the fog.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Not to try and look through the fog for any particular shape. Was that a shape, or was that just the movement of the cloud, or the rest of it? No, just walk down the road with the practice, and these things will come through.
We're walking out of the ignorance, basically. So.
Well, that's certainly what we would be hoping for. There are lots of opportunities for ignorance on the way, and that's how we come back into balance and we move forward. Because ignorance, like anything, can be manifest in many subtle ways, and that's why I like to describe the development of the practice not as a line, not as a linear, like a straight graph, but as a spiral. So with the spiral, we get this expanding knowledge, and then a period of consolidation, and then a period of expansion and consolidation, and that sort of thing. And so we address some aspect of ignorance on this way round, and we consolidate that, and then we have a more subtle version of that, which we then do on the next way round and round. So it's a continual process of working with developing our clear comprehension, which in turn is then reducing our ignorance.
Yeah. Thank you, Hugh.
Well, I hope you make a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
Were you up in the far northeast?
Yeah, I'm in Mizoram, and I went to the south of Mizoram, and that's where the doctor said I caught it there because it's a malaria zone.
Okay.
And I didn't know I was going into a malaria zone. So I just went to visit some friend in a monastery, and it seems I got it, but it stays in your body, and it manifests after 1 or 2 weeks. You start to get the symptoms.
Okay.
So now I'm taking the medicine, and I need 1 week or about 10 days to finish.
Okay. Well, I wish you a speedy recovery. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyway, where in the world are you now?
I'm in Oxfordshire in England.
Oh, you're back. You're back, right?
I'm right back. Yes. Yeah.
Coming to India again?
Due back, I think the middle of November.
Of November. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Will be good to see you back here.
Yes. Well, I'm due to teach with Bhante at Deer Park in Himachal Pradesh. Yeah. Beer. That's right. Yeah.
Good.
And then I think there are two other retreats as well. One back in Pune and one at Bangalore the Mahabodhi Center.
Or someone was just recommending me to go to like a permanent place for meditation. The Mahabodhi Society in Bangalore.
Ah, well, myself and Banti will be there 2nd or 3rd, 4th of January next year for a 10-day retreat.
Yeah, I'll try to synchronize.
Yeah, that would be good. Okay, well, lovely to see you.
Thank
Does
you.
anyone else have anything they'd like to ask?
Hello, you sir.
Hello there.
My name is Siddhant.
Hello, Siddhant.
Yeah, it might be the first time I'm talking with you.
Ah, yes, indeed. It's
Yeah.
been a pleasure to see you.
I have done 2 metta meditation retreats with Khema sister,
Ah, yes.
and recently I had a privilege to accompany Anand Bhantiji for 1 week when he was in Mumbai.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So right now you are speaking about the jhana and the mental factors that are present while you experience the first or the 4 jhanas. Like the investigative mind is awake and your energy is awake while you experience these jhanas. But as soon as you go in the higher jhanas, and there when you completely in the deep state of unconsciousness, nevasaya nasaya, in that jhana, and after that you experience the Kotrapu jhana. So can you explain what are the mental factors present in the later jhanas?
Well, the later jhanas, they're not states of unconsciousness. This is an important thing. If we look at the Majjhima 111, which is Sariputta's description of going through the consciousness, through the jhanas, it's very clear from that there's a consciousness that is still present, and contact is experience, and perception is experienced. So we can think of the jhanas, sometimes they're just described as jhanas 1 through to 8 and then possibly even 9, depending on how you view them. But the best way I found to describe them is as 4 jhanas. So the first 3 and then the 4th being equanimity. And then the arupa jhanas being, if you like, developments of or refinements of that 4th jhana of equanimity. So the factors in the higher jhanas are equanimity. That is the factor that's left out of all of that with the mindfulness and awareness. And we go through infinite space.
Yes.
And that's a particular sensation, a particular experience. And we go to infinite consciousness. So in infinite space, we have compassion. Our practice, if we're basing our practice not on breath but on the Brahma Viharas, the loving kindness will change to compassion, and that has a particular textural change in our experience in the mind. And then as we move from infinite space to infinite consciousness, we go into mudita, or altruistic joy or sympathetic joy. So there's a feeling of joy is present there, but it's a much more subtle feeling of joy than, say, the uplifting joy of second jhana. And then we move from infinite consciousness into nothingness. And nothingness then has the quality of equanimity. So with the infinite space, the infinite consciousness, and the nothingness, we still radiate each of those Brahma Viharas. In infinite space, we're radiating compassion. In infinite consciousness, we're radiating sympathetic joy. In nothingness, we're radiating equanimity. And then as we develop our capacity in nothingness, we develop an aspect of nothingness which Bhante Vimalaramsi described as quiet mind.
Yes.
And quiet mind is, if you like, the preparatory stage to the next Rupa jhana, which is the neither perception nor non-perception.
No perception.
Okay. So what
Yeah.
we notice in quiet mind is that we're no longer able to radiate equanimity. The radiating itself, it creates tension. So we release away from that, and the mind settles. And now we're developing the capacity for mind simply to observe mind. And it's preparing the mind for moving into neither perception nor non-perception. So in neither perception or non-perception, typically we don't always understand whether or recognize that we're meditating, because our perception is in that state of neither perception nor non-perception. So we can't clearly perceive how things are. So neither perception or non-perception is known, if you like, by reflection when we come out of it. And we recognize there are certain attributes around it, which is what we would then describe to our teachers. And neither perception or non-perception, again, is preparing the mind to release from perception. And that's the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. And the release of perception, feeling, and consciousness is, if you like, the process is the culmination of a process that started in quiet mind, where we were moving away from observing signs. In other words, the feeling of infinite space is a sign, it's a nimitta in the mind. The feeling of infinite consciousness is another nimitta, it's a different experience. Nothingness itself is another sign. And then as we get into quiet mind, we're conditioning the mind into being more aware of the signless rather than the signed. Neither perception or non-perception is a further refinement of that. And then the cessation of perception, feeling, of consciousness is when the mind has completely gone for the signless. And so that is, if you like, the progression of the mind through the practice. And the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness then conditions the mind to be aware of the signless. And so that's when sometimes when we come out of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, we can have an experience of nibbana, which is the signless state. So that's a whistle-stop tour through the jhanas. I hope, well, let me ask you, did that answer your question?
Yes. I got a brief clarity about the mental states, because in between I had left my practice due to some hectic schedule, but I have started it again, and like I also need revision, and soon I am planning to do one retreat, and this revision was important by you explaining those later jhana, because since I have attained those jhanas, but not able to stay in that jhanas for a long time. So I will definitely improve myself and practice more and get into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Thank you, Yusuf.
I would like to add here.
Please do, Tom.
What our teacher is speaking, he is speaking the intricacies of the collected states of the mind and various jhanas. Whereas the questionnaire has put mental factors. Mental factors is nothing but a defiled mind. And Gotrabhu is speaking, is a noble person. When Gotrabhu is changed, he is a noble person, not a lay person. These words are available in the Abhidhamma. But twin practice is entirely different.
Okay, just say a little bit more about why the jhanic factors are, if you like, signposts.
You are speaking in a right way. Everything you are spoken in a correct manner. But to understand his way of expression is from the bookish way of speaking.
Okay.
They are not compatible with our twin practice.
Well, the thing about the factors of the jhanic factors is the best way to treat them are like signposts along the way. You know, not to. The danger is to hold on to the factors. So we can have the joy in the second jhana, and it can be a very lovely feeling. And then we can if we're not careful, we focus our attention on the joy, and so then the jhanic factor becomes the object of attention of meditation rather than staying with the loving kindness. So the best thing about the jhanic factors is to treat them like a signpost and leave them as we travel past, rather than try and hold on to them or attribute any more importance to them other than the fact that they're a very useful signpost. Any other questions? That's really nice questions. And Siddhant, thank you very much for your question there.
Thank you, sir.
I just have one little question.
Yes, Sam.
During the early stages of the jhana, do we still feel pain in our legs from sitting for too long?
Yeah, you don't lose the sensation of the body until you're really into the third jhana. So you'll still have sensations, you'll be aware of discomfort in the body if it, in the terms of unpleasant Vedana, unpleasant feeling. So you'll need to siksar your reaction to that unpleasant feeling. You don't siksar the feeling itself, because that's the truth right now, but your reaction to the feeling is what you siksar. So if you mind that sensation, you relax the tension of that minding that's in the brain, around the brain, and also soften around the sensation in the body, just around the edges. But when you get up into the third jhana, and then certainly into the fourth jhana, awareness of the body itself becomes much less, because you're releasing tension very deeply. And so a lot of the internal referencing that we have to our body begins to disappear. But what won't disappear is contact. You'll always still be aware of contact. So if someone comes along and touches you, or if there's a breeze across your arm, or if a fly lands on you, or in your case a mosquito, you will notice this. But it doesn't mean the whole body lights up. It's just the place itself where the contact is lights up.
They are all activities of our interest. They will come in the way.
Please say that again. I couldn't quite hear that.
No, they are all of interest to us. They will come in our way for jhanas as distractions.
Yep. And so this is why the Buddha described third jhana as being a very positive state, because there was a state of great ease in it, because we kind of left.
Third jhana means you will be stabilizing in the maximum extent.
Okay, so we can still be in the early jhanas and be aware of our body, and it's a great place to develop a relationship to the hindrances, and using the 6 R's to use the hindrances as a way of teaching us. And then as we go through the jhanas, the hindrances drop away. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, certainly does.
Okay. Anything else? No. Okay, let's close with a closing sharing of merit. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the time we get to explore teaching again.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye now.